My name is Henrike Lode. I'm an educational game designer from Germany based in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I work on games that teach kids programming. Kind of making the games I want to make. I'm quite lucky that I could get some funding so I can make games that don't need to be selling very well, because that's like one of my issues, that I'm not quite sure how to make money, especially like as the years progress it gets harder and harder because there's more and more competitors. Making educational games that are actual entertainment products is something I'm super passionate about, and it's just something that's really hard to do proper marketing for, and to get it out in front of the right audiences. Like I do some consultant work on other educational games, and I see a lot of projects that use some weird gimmick, like technology, like augmented reality, because that makes them look cool, and that's how they could get some special funding from somebody who said, we have to use this special technology, and it's in the way of the development, because we could make a better game if we actually did it in 2D, or if we didn't use augmented reality, if we could just like focus on the quality of the project itself and what we're trying to do. So, somebody puts up a fund and makes special rules to basically exclude other people and make sure that the pool is rather small, and then people tailor their applications for this specific funding, but not really because they're passionate about making games in that way or because that's the best for the product. I guess currently a lot of games basically reinforce stereotypes that we have, because there's a very stereotypical image of what a hero in a video game is being portrayed, and very male-focused kind of characters or storytelling. So I think a lot of games don't necessarily challenge people's stereotypical view on things right now. But there's a lot of movement in the indie scene, and in, I don't know, some niche games where people are really trying to get to the core, like some core emotion of a player and change it, like games that try to help us relate with people who are very different from us, or games that are about really traumatic experiences, something like that just like give you something really personal. It's not really a trend yet, but it's slowly moving there, and I hope we can do more in these areas. I do more non-violent games. Violence is not really an interesting thing for me to explore. It's quite happening a lot. I've actually been listening to a talk from Stig Ruan, Double Tap, about violence in video games, and he's been phrasing it perfectly what I feel about it. So, like, ever since I was a kid, I had trouble with the whole death thing. When we're like playing something, when we're playing shooting each other, people be like, "You're dead," and it's like, no, we're just sleeping, like let's make this a little less dramatic, because I think death is something to take really serious, and games just totally trivialize it. And you can always live again. So games that explore stuff like permadeath, that's a lot more interesting when we go back to like, what does death really mean? I once did a storytelling kind of game that you basically are trying to replay your life and trying to make decisions that lead to a better or a worse ending of your life. So it's kind of a normal, mundane life, but the decision you made when you were 7, if you kissed the childhood love or not, that changes your entire life and opens up different endings. And I try to design it with gender-neutral characters, so anyone could play this game and picture their relationships in it. And that, I think, was more like a realistic, at least, generic, a little bit relationship kind of thing. And think the most fantastical thing I did was a programming teaching game that it plays in a robot world, where you're a robot girl trying to repair things, and it still plays in a way like in our everyday life, because she has a job and she needs to do stuff and needs to prove herself and learn to become good at repairing machines. As much as possible. I realized that with the Machineers, the programming teaching game that I was just talking about, that is kind of male focused still, because it's robots and girls are not necessarily that interested in it. So the new game that I'm working on now is called To Be a Whale, and it's about being a whale in the ocean, and I think that's the most gender neutral thing I've ever designed, because it really doesn't tell you who you're supposed to be. You can be analytical, you can be caring about a family of whales, and I think we can really talk to anyone independent of their gender. So, there's this boys are good at technical stuff and girls are not, this stereotype, and if you hear it often enough, you believe it. And boys like games and girls don't. Like this is the kind of stuff that you hear, and then girls are like, I'm not supposed to like games. So I don't know. I think we have to really go into a lot of like different steps, especially in education, where there's the study that programming courses are a lot better visited. They have a lot better gender equality or like ratio if you remove the requirements of knowing programming beforehand. If you change the title of the course to be something about creative things, that you can create something, and if you put some female role models, like so if you could do a field trip and meet other female engineers and software engineers, that all these if you do these three things, you can basically reach a 50-50 gender ratio. And we're not quite doing that, although it's a really easy fix, I think. I don't think they happen often enough. If I look around, like the game studios in my area, my friends, basically anyone I know there don't think a lot about diversity and hiring diversity. There's basically, in Denmark, I'm aware of one studio that really does that, that's Knapnock Games. They really actively encouraging people from diverse backgrounds to join the team. Everyone else is just, you hire the people you know and that are around, that you've been maybe working with, that are confident enough to walk up to you at a bar and say like, hey, can I have a job? And they're like, yeah, okay. And that would be the default thing for me to do as well. Like if I have any kind of job opening, it's easy to hire just a white dude. But I want to look a little bit more into how can I encourage people, how can I even find, because they're not in your face all the time coming towards you saying, hey, I have the skills you need. Anyone who's not a white male is like kind of lacking that confidence or the visibility, basically. It takes a little bit more work to find them. In the beginning, I didn't quite know what I was going to do when I got into games. Just thought I was just going to do educational games because I care about transforming education into something that can be really enjoyable and just open up opportunities rather than judging people. And the more I've been doing it and making casual games with friends at game jams, the more I realized there's all these amazing experiences that we can build into it, the social impact we can achieve, and we can reach people who, games have an amazing power to transform people, and we're not using it enough. I guess the most amount of research I've done was during my master thesis when I was writing like a design guide for how to make great educational games. And I've been researching, I think the best material I got was from Simon Egenfeld-Nielsen's study, the 3-generational model of educational games. But that's quite old. I think that maybe like 10 years ago that he wrote his PhD on it, and there's not a lot of good research to be found in that area. And also for me, the practical application is really important because you have to make these games and test them with kids, and how do we measure if they learn something is really hard to do, because learning programming means we have to do long-term studies. We have to test, like when they do programming courses later on, is that actually helping them or not, and how do you quantify that? And I don't have time when I have to make a living of video games to do this kind of research, and then I'm trying to collaborate with universities. But for some, I don't know what the holdup is, but it's really hard getting just a PhD researcher to take my game and test it, or like help me with what I need. When I look back at the first game I made, I see a lot of flaws. I see a lot of broken puzzles, or like where we broke the metaphor, and all of a sudden it's not really good at teaching programming anymore, and it's just sliding towards becoming a puzzle game. And I'm really worried the same thing is going to happen with this game as well, that at the end we're going to make compromises on teaching programming in order to have better gameplay. And I want to try to keep this as close as possible together. So having some outside eyes on it, of people seeing those mistakes, or like where we're tending towards the wrong way and stopping us, that would be definitely helpful. It's quite a problem that a lot of European countries are integrating programming into their curriculum for kids from a really young age, but they don't educate the teachers on how to teach programming. They're basically just taking maybe the English teacher or the math teacher and saying, you are the new programming teacher now, good luck with your job. And I mean, there is no education that tells us how to teach programming to kids. So even if they went to university to learn programming, they wouldn't learn how to teach it to 10-year-olds. That's a whole different thing. Like, adults are struggling with this. We don't know really how we're supposed to be doing that. They don't get extra money. They have like half an hour to prepare for a class. So if they get this game and the game does everything, like basically we print out maybe a PDF that tells them this is the exercise for today, and this is how you talk to kids, and if they ask you how to solve this problem, here's the solution. And that's all. You print it, you read it through, half an hour preparation time, and then you just put the kids in front of the game and let them learn by themselves, and you can just support them without losing face, because of course you have to be the authority and you have to be smarter than the kids, and they know games better and computers better than the teachers, so it's intimidating for the teachers to use technology.